Well, hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Cricket Surgery. My name is Vasant Iyer and I'm joined by Dr. Aditya Joshipura as always. Today we have a very special episode for you as we look at two legends of the game in one episode. One, a former great of the game and one of the most successful captains of all time, and the other, the current Test captain of India. So, yes, we're going to talk about Steve Waugh and Virat Kohli, and we're going to compare their numbers, not only as batsmen, but also their records as captains and their individual contributions towards elevating the game of Test cricket through their unique brand of leadership. Adi, are you excited to talk about Kohli versus Steve Waugh?
Absolutely, absolutely can't wait. So indirectly, Kohli becomes the first contemporary cricketer to star in a legend series, right? I think
Absolutely.
that's fitting too for
Oh,
us.
yeah, for sure. And
So,
we've worked really hard in kind of getting some research through to you, just so that we can present a complete picture. Now, before we even start off, just a little disclaimer, right? I mean, there are going to be audiences from various parts of the world are going to be watching this. For India, India is a very passionate country, and there are reasons that we really love Kohli. But I just want to say that we also really respect Steve Waugh, and we just want to kind of present a balanced view of why we first of all think that these players should be compared, and then we'll move on to their legacy and their memorable performances and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let me share my screen and take you through some numbers, and we're going to do this step by step. Obviously, we start off with most runs ever by any batsman in the history of cricket, and obviously we all know that Sachin Tendulkar is at the top of the list. And very surprisingly, you'll see that I don't know how surprising it is for you, but for us, Steve Waugh, even though he has close to 11,000 runs, he features around 10th or 11th in this list over here, and and
where is Kohli?
I'm just trying to. Okay, so there's Steve Waugh here. There's Hashim Amla. There's Graham Smith. There's VVS Lakshman, Joe Root, Clark, Hayden, S.Waugh, Viv Richards, Boycott, Sobers. Just trying to find the one man who's of interest to us. Here it is. Virat Kohli right at the very bottom over here, uh, with about 7,500 runs at an average of close to 53 with 27 hundreds. Now, at the very outset, you might be thinking, well, how does this comparison even make sense? Here is a batsman who is at the very bottom of the rankings when it comes to total number of runs ever made. So why are we talking about? So Adi, do you want to give people a hint about why we're talking about Kohli and Steve Waugh?
Oh, oh, absolutely. Because it's not just the number of runs that anybody makes; it's about the kind of runs that they have made, right? So you know that out of those 7,500, at least 5,000 or 5,500 have been made against great quality opposition. And
Hmm.
it's also the circumstances in which they've been made. I think we'll be referring to those numbers later on. So that same thing used to be said about Steve Waugh as a captain and as a player. He used to make tough runs. If there's anybody in the world right now who makes tough runs, it's Virat Kohli. So I think the comparison as batsman is fair. Of course, Virat is a work in progress still, and he's probably going to play at least 50 more test matches. So maybe at the end of the career of Virat Kohli, we might be talking differently.
Hmm.
But it's still a fascinating comparison because both are right-handed batsmen, both are wonderful captains with a body of work behind them, and both have 25 plus test hundreds. So, yeah, fair
All right. So,
comparison.
so just kind of jumping a little bit into performance by individual countries. We're still going to look at only runs made in individual countries, and as you can see over here, Steve Waugh has a formidable record, absolutely phenomenal. 48. He averages close to 6,000 runs at home. In England, his record is phenomenal, an average of 75. Great average in South Africa, and obviously he averages close to 70 batting against the absolutely fiery and pacey wickets and bowlers of the West Indies of the 90s as well. So this is a very formidable looking record, and I'm going to let Adi talk about Kohli's performance by country over here. So Adi, what is your top observation from what you see on this list?
My top observation is Kohli loves Australia. for sure. You can see he's got more than 1,300 runs across 4 tours. Maybe not all fully completed, but that's insane. 6 centuries and all top class against difficult opposition in difficult times. So clearly loves Australia. England, we know he had that horrible tour in 2014, and then he jumped back with 600 runs the other time. So I think he's learned to bat in England. The way he bats in England this time will give us a clearer picture of how much he's progressed as a batsman. He's already proven himself on one tour, so it's not like any sheen is going to be taken away from him. That's the thing. So if you see just pure numbers, Kohli loves Australia and South Africa. The wickets with more bounce, as you would see. But that's not to say that he doesn't like seam bowling. He did have a great record in New Zealand, although 2 tests before this, and that England tour. So it's an excellent record. And for those who believe that Kohli just keeps hammering Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, the record there is for all to see that he's got a very, very average record in Sri Lanka. Even in the West Indies, when they have gotten weaker, except for the double hundred, and in Bangladesh, he's just played 1 test match. So it tells me that whatever cricket Kohli has played out of those 91 tests, most of it has been competitive, even though at home, but it's been competitive.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, his performance against Bangladesh and Sri Lanka is nothing to write home about compared to his performance some of the other Sena countries. So we just want to establish this at the very outset that even though S.Waugh did play at a time where he was probably his team was probably competing against every other test playing nation, at the same time Virat Kohli's runs have also come in the hard situations, in tough circumstances, you mentioned. Anyway,
I'll just put a spanner here. Virat Kohli has been facing bowling attacks in probably friendlier conditions and more rounded bowling attacks. Every time there used to be a couple of great bowlers and the attacks used to taper away. Right now, you see New Zealand, you see England, there's all-round quality coming right through. New Zealand have bowled Saudi, followed by Wagner and Jamieson. Same for England, same for the other attacks. Australia have a well-rounded attack too, which they used to always have. So I think Kohli's runs should not be discounted as easy runs because they've not been easy.
Absolutely. And now we're also now that we've seen the individual batting numbers by country, we also have to remember that S.Waugh has played almost twice the number of matches that Virat Kohli has so far in his slightly extended shortish career. That Kohli has already played over 90 tests, but it's still only slightly over
still
half.
A baby career compared to, the comparison that we are making here is with an all-time legend. So yeah, as a batsman, yeah, it's tough to jump.
We'll jump into the captaincy aspect now. We've talked about runs, as I mentioned. So these are all of the captains, all of the famous legends that we've known growing up, people who have led their countries with great pride. So Graham Smith at the absolute top over here, 109 matches as captain. Totally ridiculous. His percentage of wins are also close to 50%, and it's absolutely phenomenal. But when you compare this chart to the total number of runs made by people, you see that Virat Kohli is, and this is obviously sorted by the total number of matches, as captain, and he's already tied with MS Dhoni, and his 61st match as captain, which will be the highest ever by an Indian captain, will be at the WTC final, which I think is a great moment for all of us.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So here you see the interesting stat here is the percentage of wins. Now, if you see S.Waugh, it's absolutely off the charts. It's 72% wins. Now, for someone who's captain for 57 test matches, having a 72% win-loss record, it's out of this world. He lost 9 test matches in an extended captaincy career of 5 years. That's insanely good.
If you see that through the entire list over here, he's one of maybe 2 or 3 other captains who've not even lost double-digit number of matches, right? So it's him. There's Viv Richards, Sunil Gavaskar, but that was a time when people fought harder for draws than victories, probably. So as you can see over here, but again, formidable record. You can see that it's absolutely phenomenal. He didn't even lose 10 matches. He's won a lot of test matches, S.Waugh.
Also, I think it's also got to do a lot with the kind of cricket teams play these days. There are hardly any draws. So you'll see that Kohli has a 60% win-loss record, which is again outstanding for an Indian captain. It's probably the highest that an Indian captain surely has. And but he's got his fair share of losses too. So it's not just the number of wins; it's the kind of cricket teams play and the relative strengths and weaknesses. So it's an interesting study for sure.
I think I'll just the other important part of it is that we definitely want to discuss is when we look at the fact that Kohli has lost 14 matches compared to only 9 for Steve Waugh, we must also understand the context in which Virat Kohli has led his team versus and the manner in which he took over the team versus Steve Waugh, who was taking over when the team was already number one in the Test rankings. He had McGrath, he had Vaughan, he had Ponting, he had Gilchrist. And he had like Matthew Hayden, Justin Langer. He had like every possible Australian legend on that team, so who were individually capable of winning matches themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's in fact, I can bet my last dime that all the 9 matches that Steve Waugh has lost have been epics. He would not have lost any easy matches. It would take performances like Eden Gardens of 2001 or Chennai of 2001 or something similar. Mark Butcher won 73. I think Waugh wasn't the captain then, but yeah. Or Brian Lara, the back-to-back efforts. It took those kind of efforts to beat Steve Waugh and Steve Waugh's team, basically. So you're absolutely right that merely just quoting Kohli's losses as them is not the right thing to do.
Mhm.
The context is very important.
I think this is another stat that I think people will, our viewers will find very very interesting as well. These are most number of runs playing as captain, and you can see that Virat Kohli is already creeping to the very top over here. And I think it'd be fair to say that by the time Virat Kohli is done, he's currently at 5,400 odd runs as captain. It's truly mind-boggling, and to just kind of give you a little bit of context as to this is more than the number of career runs, for many top order batsmen, who haven't scored these many runs overall in their careers. And if you realistically look at this, by the time Kohli is going to be done, he's going to be at least number two in
For
most
sure.
ever as captain. And Steve was nowhere, in the list over here right now.
Steve took over captaincy when he was what 33, right? So coming from that point of view, handling the team for 57 tests is still a fair deal, and also he scored runs at a fair clip to 52.31 as captain. This is where probably Kohli really outdoes most current captains and a lot of the legends too.
Mm-hmm.
So 60 test matches is a fair body of work, and having an average of 59, close to 59 with 20 test hundreds, it's absolutely mind-boggling. And to think that he's at least got 15, 20 more tests as captain inside him, God knows where he's going to go end up. Surely the greatest Indian test captain even now, and he's surely going to end up as that. And as a batsman, as a captain, he's right up there with the best in the world. There's no
Mm-hmm.
doubt about it, ever.
I think the other, really unique thing that I found on, and I think most people would know of this, this graphic which said Commander Kohli. So also most number of 200s ever as captain. I think he's comfortably, won over many of the mainstream names that we are aware of. Why don't we talk a little bit about memorable knocks? So we've talked about all of these things. It's very obvious that Virat Kohli is already. In the running for at least the second or the third most successful captain of all time. But coming back to the reason why we decided to compare Kohli and Waugh's style of leadership, what do you think are things that they do similarly, or in what ways are they really different from each other? What is your perspective on that?
So personality-wise, I think they're quite different. Like Waugh was quietly intense, I would say, when he was on the field, while Kohli is this open, expressive, brash character that just takes everyone on the face. As batsmen, probably Kohli would be more technically correct, I'd say, and more adept at handling the short ball. Waugh was famously bad at handling short pitch stuff. So comparatively, that way, Kohli does come across as a different person. I think where they're similar is go for win at all costs, and the love for fast bowlers. So Steve O had a champion spinner in Shane Warne, and Kohli. I think it's fair to say now that he has a champion spinner in Ashwin. But you see the temperament. Both the skippers would want their pacemen to set the tone for the test match. So I think that is where they are very very similar. They're both quietly aggressive, and the comparisons go that the right-handed middle order batsman of the highest pedigree. So yeah, Waugh had the advantage of being surrounded by a team of legends, like you said. But Kohli, almost stood alone for the most of first half of his captaincy career. Now he's got some good company alongside. But even then, Kohli is the man to watch always. In Steve Waugh's team, I don't think that was always the case, where Steve Waugh used to be the most dangerous batsman in his team. So that way, Kohli has, besides being the Indian captain, where the pressure is tremendous, uh, Kohli does have the pressure of being the best batsman in the team. So I think it's a pressure that Kohli handles amazingly well.
Mhm.
But Steve Waugh did that too. So, different challenges, different people, but a lot of similarities in terms of their approach to the game.
What was if we kind of swapped around the bowling attacks of those years with now. So let's say that Steve was now facing Jasprit Bumrah, Ollie Robinson, Stuart Broad. I think there's a chance that James Anderson bowled to him back then, very realistically. So,
Almost did.
or maybe he debuted just as Waugh was retiring. So I think that's.
He just missed out by a few weeks,
I'm
actually.
very sure he would
Uh,
have been to Waugh.
yeah.
So, while talking about this, do you think Kohli's? We all know that Kohli, has the technical adaptability to survive and not only kind of make runs, tough runs, but also grind out tough periods. Do you think he would have been as successful batting against the likes of Wasim Akram, Curtly Ambrose, Sean Pollock, Alan Donald? Just every single name that's just kind of coming out of my mouth right now, Courtney Walsh, in the 90s. Do you think Virat Kohli's record would have been as formidable?
It would have made for a fantastic viewing, that's for sure. I mean, it's debatable whether the home record would have been so astounding. But overseas, I think he still faces a lot of tough conditions these days. The pitches in South Africa, England are still very, very spicy. And much like Tendulkar, he himself still carries the burden of the team for a long time. It's it's been visibly easing for the last couple of years, but uh, I mean, you might say that he might have had, say, an average of say 45 over 53 or something, and maybe a couple of hundreds lesser. But I'm pretty sure that he would have done reasonably well even there too.
I
So,
think that's a fair point because people talk about being a nostalgia merchant, right? Because we've grown up watching some great players, so we end up thinking that nobody can replicate them. But I think there's merit in the fact that Ben Stokes or even like a Pat Cummins, not even a Pat Cummins, he's the number one bowler, but all of these bowlers can bowl really, really long spells. They are very, very strong, and they have the help of support and conditioning staff that kind of enables them to bowl at a similar pace. Maybe the skill sets can't be
yeah,
matched.
but you see the consistency of the pressure applied everywhere. As I said, New Zealand have this continuous four-man pace attack that just keeps coming at you. England have Anderson, Broad, Jofra, and Mark Wood, and all the other guys continuously coming in. Now even India have that kind of an attack, but people just don't stop. Aussies have. So earlier it used to be two great bowlers, and then it used to taper away. And maybe at least in the mid 2000s, the pitches were absolutely beautiful batting tracks that led to a lot of false, flattering averages too. I think the conditions right now have become much tougher for batting.
Sure.
Also, with the advent of T20, the batsmen's techniques and all have changed. So, a lot of factors, but with the commitment Kohli shows to Test cricket and the improvement that he keeps showing, I'm pretty certain that he would have figured out a way to face Donald after getting bowled for a couple of times. Yes.
I think there's no shame in getting bored. I think all these great players have
Oh
gotten
yes,
out every now
absolutely.
and then.
Yeah.
In terms of the other aspect that I want to talk about, when we talk about legacy and the impact that captains leave on their teams, we obviously know that Steve Waugh had the whole baggy green culture going on. He really got people. He tried his level best, to make people feel proud, and then the Australian public was very, very proud of their team then as well. In terms of the legacy that Virat Kohli has shaped for himself and the legacy that he's leaving for the Indian team, hasn't yet. It's going to take a couple of years, but he's been doing it for so long. It does feel like the same bowlers. Like if you look at some of the numbers that Ishant Sharma, Mohammad Shami, or any of the other, even Ravichandran Ashwin had, they've
Yeah.
all matured as bowlers as time has gone. So not all credit probably goes to Kohli, but because you mentioned this impetus and this focus on chasing wins at all time, I wonder how much of that has rubbed onto our bowlers becoming who they are right now.
The fitness. I mean, who can take that part away from any of the bowler? I mean, we saw Ishant Sharma toiling away like a poor donkey all through the early 2000s under a different skipper who would just use him to take the shine of the ball and then give it over to the spinners. And you see, there's a captain who trusts his seamers, and given the conditions, he will go to his seamers at all costs. So you see the likes of fast bowlers dropping through. It's not a coincidence. It's surely the captain who is filtering this culture. When was the last time we saw an entire set of pace bowlers going through an entire year playing overseas, not getting injured?
Mhm.
2018, we had Bumrah, Shami, Ishant right through the year going not injured, not nothing, anything else. So that is something that is really, really got to be taken into account. So Kohli's greatest legacy is probably going for win at all costs and also the fitness.
Sure.
So I think,
Uh,
and he leads by example. That's for sure.
Definitely. And I think the other important part that we probably haven't mentioned is the fact that Virat Kohli is an all-time great across all formats of the game. He is
Yeah,
a legendary T20 player who has two Man of the Series awards in T20 World Cups. He doesn't give a, he doesn't really care about that too much. ODI cricket, obviously, he is probably the greatest ODI player of all time. He hasn't won ICC tournaments, so he gets flack every now and then, but I don't think he deserves those. uh, Poor selection has been something that has always been a little bit of a blot in Virat Kohli's sort of captaincy. But I think even that is improving in the last year or so. The focus is now very clearly on merit and not ego of the selector or the coach. It does seem to be that we're trying to pick the best person or the best team possible for any game.
exactly. You see Ishan, you see the likes of Mohammad Siraj coming in, you see the likes of Shami getting better and better, and Jasprit Bumrah is Jasprit Bumrah. Well, so and there's another entire lot coming through as well. There's the likes of Yadav, there's the likes of Prasidh Krishna, and so many others that are coming through. So it's a legacy that Kohli is leaving, just like the legacy Steve Waugh left on the Australian team. You see the team that Ponting inherited, and the numbers that you showed previously told us that Ponting had an amazing record as skipper. Right, he won 48 out of 77 matches as skipper. How much of this is down to Steve Waugh?
That's true. That's true.
Ponting's captaincy was in two parts, right? Till 2007, when he had every single member of that legend team around, and post 2007, he kept on losing a lot. So I think even Ponting's greatness as a captain had a lot to do with the culture that Steve was setting.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that's Steve was legacy.
So as the ones that I do remember from Kohli's perspective that I think are top-notch captain knocks are the Adelaide Twins. Phenomenal, start to his captaincy career. Then 2018, like all of 2018 was just absolutely fabulous. His century first in South Africa in Centurion, then his 97 and 100 in a winning cause in Trent Bridge, the sandstorm innings in Perth in 2018 towards the end, and obviously Edgbaston 2018 as well. So these are some of even as we were kind of like talking about these innings, it just seemed like yeah, these are absolutely top notch, top quality innings that any captain would be proud of making.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, see, as captain, Kohli has led from the front a lot of times without having too much support. Steve Waugh's innings tend to be a little lesser memorable because he had all this support system going around. Yet, if you look at it, again, a lot of Steve Waugh's memorable performances have come in losses. Now, the two hundreds in West Indies that he got in 1999 were all both excellent hundreds against the likes of Ambrose, Walsh, and everyone. Both got overshadowed by Brian Lara's brilliance. Then again, in Eden Gardens in 2001, the Lakshman Dravid Harbhajan test. Again, he got a fantastic 100 after Australia were reduced to 250 for 7 on a pitch that was turning on day one. And yet, again, he ended up on losing side. And he's also got that famous nostalgic Ashes century, which was, I think, his 30th Test century, where he got 100 by hitting a 4 on the last ball of the day. The emotion around that made it really memorable. Steve Waugh has got captaincy a little later in his career. So most of his performances as a batsman came before he actually became captain. Most of his absolutely memorable, like those twins at Trent Bridge and all. But even so, he's got some fantastic hundreds as keeper. So yeah, it's pretty good.
But if you see the total number of runs scored as captains in winning causes, Virat Kohli is number 3 in Test matches. So there's Graham Smith, and at 53 matches, 1600s, an average of 62, absolutely tremendous. Ricky Ponting, very close average, similar number of runs, similar number of matches, and Virat Kohli about just 1,000 runs short, but I think he's going to get there, and I think he's going to surpass. There's a good chance that he might surpass both Ponting and Graham Smith by the time he's done in terms of total number of runs in winning causes as captain.
And you see Steve Waugh here again, while he had a very good average and the number of runs that he scored, this is a function of the fact that he had an excellent lineup around him. You see that he's played more matches than Kohli, yet has scored almost 1,000 runs lesser than Kohli. Because there were people around him who used to score all the runs, and then there were people who used to win matches for him.
Make sure that you don't need so many runs.
Yeah, exactly. Steve Waugh's runs needed not to be those priceless runs that Virat Kohli has had.
For sure.
So again, this is a very, very revealing graphic.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. Some great names over here. Only 4 of them, surprisingly, have gotten more than 10 hundreds as captain in winning causes, which also tells you something as to how difficult it is, to get runs as captain in winning. He's captained India for exactly 30 matches in India and 30 matches overseas. So it's exactly a 50-50 split. And in the 30 matches he's led abroad, again, he averages 50 with 10 hundreds, which is way more than anybody else other than Graham Smith.
There you go. That's the thing, right? So it's probably right now we are looking at Graham Smith, Ricky Ponting, Virat Kohli, Steve Waugh, along with probably Clive Lloyd as the top 5 captains ever. Border would maybe have a say in that, but
6th as the so it's like
sixth.
a club of 5
So
or 6. These are the 5 or 6.
It's a club of 5 all-time great Test captains that we are looking at.
Yeah, so that sort of brings us to the end of this discussion and this analysis. We hope that you found our research useful. We hope that you found our discussions to be rational and reasonable. And most of all, we hope that you really enjoyed listening to us talk about 2 very amazing cricketers and legends of the game, Steve Waugh and Virat Kohli.
No, this is probably one of my most enjoyable episodes because it's always fun. People say you shouldn't compare legends of different eras, but this is so much fun. You come across so many different perspectives, so many different potentialities. So I think it's all fair. I mean, and my prediction is that Virat Kohli is going to end up just behind Graham Smith as the greatest Test keeper ever.
And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will meet you very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.